All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, everyone. This is the first installment of a new webinar and discussion series from the Association for Fire Ecology, which we are calling Fire CAFÉ, meant to spur conversations around fire ecology. My name is Jen Stevens. I'm with the USDA Forest Service Pacific Northwest Research Station, and we are excited to have with us today a team from the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institutes, which work across Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico, to talk about their ReSHAPE program, Reshaping Wildfire and Fuels Reduction Information. Before we get started and before I hand it over to Aiden, this conversation series is hosted by the Association for Fire Ecology, and we are expecting to have more of these in the future. So we are interested in feedback from you all on what topics you might like to cover going forward for this series. We'll have some opportunity to provide that feedback at the end of the webinar. But because this is meant to spur discussion and conversation around this topic, we are organizing this a little bit differently from a traditional webinar where we're going to devote about half the time today during the next hour to discussion and conversation around what we hear today in the first half hour on the ReShape program. So during the beginning of the session, we ask that you please keep your cameras and microphones off so that we can focus on the presentation. And then as we transition to discussion and Q&A, you're welcome to turn your cameras on. Especially, we encourage folks to come on camera and on microphone to ask questions and to have a conversation with our hosts and presenters. And so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce from the ReShape program and the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute, New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute, and the Ecological Restoration Institute in Arizona, Aiden Franco, Patty Dappin, Anson Call, and Claire Rapp to talk about the ReShape program. And I will hand it over to Aiden to get us started.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jens. Annie, can I go ahead and start sharing my screen? Okay, cool. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that all right. Like Jen said, we are from the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institutes, and we will be talking about the ReShape program today and all of the things that entails. So let's dive in. Just going to start off with some introductions. We'll have each of us introduce ourselves. My name is Aiden Franco. I'm the communications manager for the ReShape program. Patty?
Hi, I'm Patty Dappin. I'm the GIS program manager for the ReShape project.
I'm Anson Call. I'm a postdoc spatial analyst at the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute in Fort Collins.
And I'm Claire Rapp. I'm the Connect or Social Science Program Manager at the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute.
Awesome. So we all work for the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institutes. And like Jen said, we are across 3 states in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. And our organization really specializes in being that bridge between research and science and land management, and really making sure that land managers have access to the most up-to-date science and that researchers have the questions that land managers are asking. So we really play that bridging kind of role. So there is a lot of data out there on fuel treatments and wildfires. And obviously, we are all here because we work in that realm on wildfire and fuel treatments. But sometimes that data can be really hard to access behind different firewalls, across different, the Forest Service, the Department of the Interior, across state systems, et cetera. So it's hard to have access to all of that at once. Our organization heard from policymakers, from land managers, from researchers that there was really this need to have all of that data in one place, have it more easily accessible, and to really compile and display it in a way that was easy to use. And so that is how the ReShape program began. to compile and display existing fuel treatment and wildfire data at a national level. And so this kind of goes more into that the federal systems of record have not been easily comparable, and that our goal was to create this centralized, accessible database at a national scale. Before any of this national database ever started, the New Mexico Institute had started making a New Mexico specific geodatabase, and this really provided a model for us to work off of when we started working on the national scale tool. And so we crosswalked the data from the US Forest Service and the Department of Interior Systems of Record to create the tool that we'll be talking about. And we created this open access tool with a really user-centric interface to promote collaboration. But we definitely did not do this alone. We've had a lot of advisors and partners, including Jens, who was speaking earlier, helping us along the way. So some of these advisors have been from the Forest Service and from the Department of Interior, data managers especially. We are also now working with the National Association of State Foresters to get state level fuel treatment data as well. And then we've been working with, oh, sorry, that just quit on me. Apologies for that technical issue. Yeah, we've also been working with some really great consultants at Innovate Inc. And they are the ones who have really done such an amazing job at creating the tool that we're going to be talking about. And then we also have a few research program areas that we'll be talking about, and all of these research programs play into the federal, into the space of fuel treatment and wildfire data as well. And so these research program areas are biophysical effects that Anson will be talking more about, the Connect social science area that Claire will be talking more about, data science that we will also cover, and economics that we're not going to get too much into today, but really looking at cost effectiveness and return on investment of fuel treatments. And so I'm going to hand it over to Anson to talk a little bit more about our biophysical effects research.
Right. So obviously one benefit of having all the fuels treatment data together in one place is that it makes it easier to understand the impact these fuel treatments are having on wildfire outcomes. And when I say wildfire outcomes, I mean things like burn severity, the speed of a fire, or the sizes of fires across the landscape. So we're just going to take a really brief peek at a case study. This is the 2020 Mangum fire, which occurred on the Kaibab Plateau in northern Arizona. And on the right here, you can see a map that shows an outline of the burn perimeter and a bunch of polygons representing different fuel treatments that have happened on that landscape. And then on the left, you can see excuse me, I'm getting my lefts and rights mixed up here. On the right, that map is actually showing the boundary of the fire, as well as sort of the progression of the fire as it spread over the course of June 2020. So next slide. So we built a really simple model to assess the effect that treatments were having on burn severity on this landscape. And there are two figures here. Each of these figures is showing a result that's specific to a treatment type, and we have 3 different treatment types. So in the yellow, that's a mechanical treatment, like a thinning treatment with no prescribed fire. The purple color, that's like a prescribed fire only type of treatment. And then the black is a combination of mechanical treatment and prescribed fire in succession. And starting with the figure on the left, this is showing the effect size of the treatment. So this is specific to burn severity. In other words, how much did the treatment reduce burn severity? And the unit here is the standard deviations of RDNBR, and RDNBR is like a satellite remote sensing derived burn severity metric. So a more negative value means that it reduced burn severity more strongly. And that's what's occurring in the fire and mechanical treatment. That black shape there, that represents our estimated effect size for the reduction in burn severity due to that combination treatment, which is about 1.5 standard deviations. So a pretty significant reduction in burn severity as a result of mechanical and fire treatments. But you can also see that the effect size estimates for the other types of treatments are also negative, suggesting that all of these treatments have a role in reducing burn severity as the fire burns through that landscape. And you can also see that in that little bar in the middle, that vertical bar has 3 little dots on it. The white dot represents the average burn severity in untreated areas, and then the 3 colored dots represent the average burn severities in those areas that were treated with the 3 different types of treatment. The figure on the right, it looks similar, but it's a little more complicated. The x-axis here is effect decay rate. So we expect that treatments will age and that fuels will sort of regrow and reestablish in the treated areas over time. And that's going to diminish the ability of the treatment to reduce burn severity. And we wanted to estimate that reduction. And so the unit here is percentage loss per year. So if a treatment loses 2% of its efficacy per year, that means it's reducing burn severity by 2% less each year that it ages. So after 10 years, 20% reduction in the effect size, so 20% less ability to reduce the severity of the fire as it moves through the landscape. So you can see here that these different treatments have different levels of resilience or persistence on the landscape. The most persistent, which has the lowest effect decay rate, is again that combination mechanical and fire treatment. And the least persistent is that purple shape, the prescribed burning only treatment. And the peaks are different heights here, reflecting our different levels of certainty in that estimate of decay rate. We had a lot of mechanical only treatments on this landscape, which means we're a little bit certain about how that effect of those mechanical treatments is decaying over time. So we had lots of treatments of different ages on the landscape that were mechanical, less so for the fire only and the prescribed fire and mechanical combination treatments. Which reflects the fact that we don't have a lot of old treatments of those types on the landscape yet, making it a little more difficult to estimate how those treatments are maintaining their efficacy over time. So that's sort of the top line summary of the results for this really simple model of how burn severity is being affected by treatments on this landscape. And we're doing more studies like this with more nuanced models that incorporate factors like wind and topography. And we're also expanding this across the West to understand how treatments are affecting fire outcomes in different locations across the United States.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that taste of fuel treatment effects research, Anson. Now we're going to have Claire talk a little bit about our social science and decision support research that connects in with our program.
For that, Aidan. So to give a brief overview of the social science work that's going on with ReSHAPE Connect, or the ReSHAPE Social Science Group, we are very heavily focused on the social science of decision support tools. TWIG is a large focus of that, but we have a broader program of research that's interested in some pretty broad questions. Who is using which decision support tools and in what way? And how do decision support tools influence decision making? For each of these questions, there's a variety of ways to approach them, and we are trying to approach them with projects that take slightly different perspectives. So just focusing in on that first one, who is using which decision support tools and in what way, we can demonstrate how to approach that both with the TWIG tool and with a policy document, community wildfire protection plans. With the TWIG tool, the ReSHAPE Connect team has been very interested while it's been in beta and been actively under development in talking with potential users, with understanding what are the pinch points, what are the things that work well, what are the example use cases that people can imagine using this tool for, all with the goal of providing feedback to the TWIG team in order to make adjustments to the tool. These are some interviews that we've conducted. We conducted them largely in 2024, got that feedback back to the TWIG team, and there have been quite a few changes made to the TWIG tool in light of the feedback that we've received to make it better for potential users and to better understand who our audience for this tool may be in the first place. But our research doesn't just focus on the TWIG tool, and there's other ways to look at who is using what decision support tools. An example of that is a project that we've done with community wildfire protection plans. So you can focus in on one tool. What are the barriers and facilitators to it? What are the example use cases? But in this one, we took a different approach. We took policy documents and we did a content analysis of every single decision support tool mentioned in these documents, categorizing them by their content, what they're about. Are they about fire risk, fire behavior, social data, etc.? And what kind of form do they take? Are they a dashboard? Are they a model? Are they data that you can look at directly? We were interested in what tools people arrive at when preparing these policy documents. And do the tools that they arrive at depend on things like spatial scale and the presence of consultants, in order to start really picking apart when different groups are navigating what is a very complicated information environment? There's a lot of decision support tools out there that can be used in a variety of ways. What tools are they arriving at? How good is the fit of that? And what are some of the factors that influence the paths that people go down to arrive at the tools that they do? So that's just a very quick overview. We have other approaches that we take, but I wanted to just give a sample of the kinds of questions that we ask and the sorts of projects that that leads to.
Great. Thanks, Claire. And for clarification, I realized I did not mention that our tool is the Treatment and Wildfire Interagency Geodatabase, also known as TWIG, which is what Claire was referring to. And we will get much more into what TWIG is made up of in just a few moments. But first, quickly going back to our research, we have a couple of recent publications that I would like to highlight, one of which is our data descriptor paper for the TWIG tool. That is the top publication there, and that is how anyone can cite the data that is in TWIG and get more information on things like the metadata, how we did the coding, etc. Anson is the lead author on that, so he will be able to answer more questions on the nitty-gritty of the data. And then the second paper is another biophysical effects paper that came out recently looking at some fires in Colorado in 2020. And these are also on our website, which is reshapewildfire.org, under research if you don't get them right now. As we were building TWIG, and in this process that Claire was talking about of evaluating the tool, we had some ideas of what potential use cases for the tool might be. So I'm going to just touch on some of those right now. But we also think that there's probably a lot of other use cases that we haven't thought of yet that hopefully some of you will come up with this enormous amount of data that is now accessible. So some of these include communicating, like storytelling about what has actually been done on the landscape, creating maps for understanding between partners, really understanding funding paths of how Congress is appropriating money and where that ends up on the landscape. Things like writing grant proposals and community wildfire protection plans, and understanding how fuel treatments interact with fires. And then before we get into our TWIG demo, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we would really love to work with all of you. We are doing some workshops really tailored to the interests and needs of different groups on data analysis with this large data set from across the nation, decision making with the data, etc. Really willing to tailor those workshops into different groups. And then research collaboration. We would love to collaborate more with all sorts of different researchers on these topics that we've been talking about, including biophysical effects, economics, decision support tool use, etc. And then upcoming, we have 2 workshops at conferences coming up. So we will have a workshop at the SAF conference in October, and then a workshop at the AFI conference in December. And now I'm going to pass it over to Patty to do our demo of the tool.
Thank you, Aiden. Here I'm going to share my screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. I am going to turn my video off just to allow the bandwidth to be a little better because there's a lot of people on the call. And before we get started, as I'm doing the demo, I'd like to ask folks to hold off on turning on the TWIG viewer just to allow the demo to work as quickly as possible. So, all right, so to access our TWIG viewer and geodatabase, you go to our website, reshapewildfire.org, and there is the link to the TWIG viewer. Once you click on it, you'll notice there's no login. So you don't have to worry about remembering a login, which is very important. We wanted to make sure this was accessible to everyone and to not get bogged down in access. The splash screen that you see at the beginning lets you know that we're still in beta version. We will have our production version ready in time for SAF towards the end of October. But looking back at the splash screen, you can take a tour, which will go through the tabs on the left to explore the functionality of the viewer, or you can simply close that and access the viewer. So the main layout, you see the layer list as well as the map view. You can search for an address or place. You can change between the topo map or looking at imagery. There is a floating legend that shows you the layers that are turned on, and you can explore the symbology. There is a reset button at the very bottom. If you build a query that you want to cancel, you can always hit reset, as well as the feedback form in the bottom right. We'd love to hear feedback on how people are using the tool or problems that they encounter. So within our layer list, we have, this is our main database that we've been working on, the TWIG treatment index and intersection. At the moment, these are federally funded treatments, so we are looking at FACS and NIFPORs, and by mid-October, we'll have IFPERS, which is the newer Department of Interior system of record. These include treatments from 1984 to the present, and we are pulling weekly from the systems of record. This is not FTEM, this is our own database. And to get more information, you can click on the three dots to view the full layer details, which will provide information about these systems of record. It will show you the attributes and the definitions that we have within the TWIG database, as well as how we have crosswalked the attributes from FACS and NIFPORs and the new fields that we've created, as well as a description for those fields. Up towards the top, you will see the URL. This is a link to our feature service. So if you want to add that to your own ArcGIS Pro desktop, or if you want to add that, this is very accessible. We wanted to make sure that this was publicly available and easily accessed. So within the fuel treatments, we have different ways of symbolizing. The default would be years since treatment, and we symbolized the older treatments to have the warmer tones, so that these would be the priority areas that would need a retreatment. You could also symbolize by treatment agency, the who is funding these treatments, as well as the treatment category. I should mention that when you log into the viewer, it will use your IP address to get a sense of where you are generally located. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that's why the map defaults to this location, but it will default to a different location based on your IP address. We wanted the layer list to not be so cluttered because there's lots of layers that we could include, but our main focus would be our fuel treatments and wildfires. So we have the WFIGS, the NIFC fire information, as well as Karen Short's fire reported points of origins, monitoring trends in burn severity, as well as administrative boundaries. We have the option to add more layers. We have a curated layer list with a lot of land fire data, or you can search for other layers that you can add. If you don't see something within the curated layer list, you can add your own feature service or upload your own file, whether it's a KML or a zipped shape file. Once you add your layer, it will appear at the bottom of the layer list, and you can remove that as you like. So that is the layer list tab. Let's keep looking. at the fuel treatments tab. This allows you to do a deeper dive into searching for fuel treatments. For fuel treatments, you can search by funding source. And again, we have compiled this so that it's easier to search by funding source, by treatment type, as well as by treatment name. You can search by treatment year. Again, the earliest year is 1984 to present, as well as treatment acres. We have the option to include planned treatments and to include treatments from facts, common attributes. These are other treatments that have an effect on the landscape, but that may have been left out of the facts hazardous fuel data set. You can also filter results by the current map extent. Because we're focused on the Southwest, I know of a treatment in Arizona called Crater Sinks. Once you select it, it will zoom to that location, and then it will provide the information within TWIG for that fuel treatment, as well as the historical fires that intersect that treatment. You can download the wildfire data as a CSV or a shapefile or a GeoJSON or other file types. But let's look a little more about wildfires. So the wildfire tab, which is underneath the fuel treatment tab, you can search by historical, recent, or current wildfires. You can search by wildfire name or incident type. You can also search by incident year or incident acres. Let's look at a recent wildfire in Colorado. Let's look at the Cameron Peak fire that was in 2020. So when you select it, your map will zoom to that location. It will provide the information about the fire, as well as all of the treatments intersecting the fire perimeter. And those treatments are coded by before the wildfire, the same year as the wildfire, or after the wildfire. You can then download all of those treatments within the burn perimeter. And then if you wanted to click on some of the fuel treatments, you can select more information to get more detailed information about the treatments. We were also asked to create a representative tab. So this allows summary information to be synthesized at the state level or at the congressional district level. Because I'm in New Mexico, I'm going to look up Teresa Ledger Fernandez. And again, a lot of our examples are in the Southwest, but again, this is a national database. I'm going to hit apply, but because it's synthesizing such a huge area, this will take about 2 to 3 minutes to run. So I'm just going to bring up one that I ran earlier just to show you what it will look, and we'll just check back at the query before this is over. So for this district, it will provide total area metrics. So the total treatment area, the total wildfire area, total funding amount, and structures in the area. The infographics provide information by treatment type by area, funding source by area, and funding amount by source. For this entire district, you can look at the treatments and download them, as well as the historical wildfire information. And all of this information can be printed as a report so that you have that information handy. So let's go back to the query. Okay, so it finished, but it will, for larger areas and larger states, they will take about 2 to 3 minutes to run, but they will run. So let me clear the view, and I would like to talk about the area summary tool, because oftentimes you have an area of interest that doesn't fit, a proper boundary, or if it's an area that you want to select. So you are able to use the draw tools to select, maybe it's an area in your neighborhood, or if it's a collaborative group, you can draw a polygon and then summarize the information within that polygon, as well as you can pick features from the map. So based on county data or state boundaries or federal boundaries, you can select a polygon. And in this case, let's look at Hux. So within the Upper Pecos, let's see, this is a huge area. This may take a while to run, but you can summarize by your by watershed boundaries, or by county boundaries, or by an area that you define. And again, this is because this is a larger, oh, here it goes. Let's give it a chance. Sometimes the live demos take a little bit of time. Okay, so here we have the infographics for the Pecos watershed, as well as you can download the treatments and wildfire information. Another prototype that we're working on is the daily fire progression tool. And for this, I'm going to turn off the fuel treatment and the wildfire information. Because the Dragon Bravo fire was such a big fire in Arizona, let's go look at the daily fire progression tool. We are collecting daily fire boundaries for the last 2 years, and to provide a visualization of how the fires are progressing every day. So I'm going to hit play, and we can see how this started. This started on the 4th of July, again, the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and truly devastating fire, over 145,000 acres. At the moment, this is contained, but it was it's a tragic fire. And we are working towards getting these daily fire progressions to be downloadable. So check back within the next 6 months or so. We expect to have this feature to be downloadable. Another tool that we have is the print function, so that you can print a map of these areas using templates, or if you build a query, you can share the URL that will save the query. Lastly, before I go, I want to point you to our resources page, our TWIG data resources, where you can access the layer information and metadata, a link to our REST service, and our GitHub page that provides our coding that was used to compile both the FACS and NIFPORS data, as well as you can download the entire Geodatabase. It's about 1.4 gigabytes. You can look at our index schema, lookup tables, as well as a link to the data paper that Aidan mentioned before. I should mention that we are working on getting state data by March of next year. We hope to have some states part of this database, but at the moment we only have federally funded treatments as part of the database. And with that, I'll hand it back to Aidan.
Okay, yeah, like Patty said, this is TWIG and is at reshapewildfire.org, and Patty's going to talk a little bit more about what makes the tool really unique.
Right. So as Claire mentioned, we've heard from folks that want a simplified query. So coming in time for SAF in October, we will be having a combined interface. So instead of a separate query for wildfire and a separate query for fuel treatments, we'll have an integrated query. So it'll be much easier to do the search. And we will have the IFPERS data as part of our database. Like Claire mentioned, we are getting as we get feedback from users, we want to make this a simplified, interface, as well as, I should mention, for the daily fire progressions, we had the request that it'd be nice to see more than one fire at a time, because often you'll have a complex of fires. So like for the Dragon Bravo fire, there was another fire that was very close. And so in the future, we will be having the option to pick more than one fire to have the daily progressions for the visualization. And yeah.
Oh, was there anything else, Patty?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's the end of our presentation. If you have questions after we have this discussion, you're more than welcome to contact us. All of our emails are on our website at reshapewildfire.org. And I will hand it over to Jens to go ahead and facilitate the discussion.